we may now know who is going to be the offensive coordinator for Jeff Hafley in 2026 for the Miami Dolphins. And that would be Brian Angelico, who is currently the Minnesota Vikings tight end coach and pass game coordinator. Why are we talking about him as an OC candidate today? Well, Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports tweeted out on Wednesday morning that Angelico is a name to monitor for the OC job in Miami, and there is a large connection between him and Jeff Hafley in their coaching careers. And when you start to connect some dots, it does feel like we will see Angelico as one of the top options for the Miami Dolphins. And not only has Jonathan Jones said that, but I've heard some buzz out there as well from people connected to Miami that Angelico is absolutely a name that is in the running and could be one of the finalists for the OC job. So we're going to talk about him on today's show. But that's why you subscribe, because we have you covered on all Miami Dolphins news. And when we hear some information, which we have heard stuff in the past, especially on the GM search, we have you covered. Let's get to 80,000 subscribers, under 200 away. Let's meet Brian Angelico now. And I got to be honest, I'm going to show some bias on him today. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it. He's from my neck of the woods. He's 53 years old. He went to St. Lawrence University in New York. Shout out my aunt. Also went to St. Lawrence. It's a Division III small school. He began coaching in 1995 at SUNY-Brockport. Where is that? My hometown, Rochester, New York. So, I'm sorry, I got some favoritism for Angelico. But as I mentioned, he did join Minnesota in 2022 as the tight end coach and the pass game coordinator. But the connection between him and Jeff Hafley is very, very strong. They coached together at 4 different spots across college and the National Football League from 2006 to 2015. And as you look at some of those stops, they were at the University of Pittsburgh from 2006 to 2010. Now, obviously, Hafley is on the defensive side of the ball. Angelico is on the offensive side of the ball. But then they both went to Rutgers and worked under Greg Schiano, the Schiano man. But then we also saw them jump to Tampa Bay for 2 years. And then Cleveland for 2 years. I just am speculating here. I don't know this, but there seems to be a really good relationship, or at least friendship, between Hafley and Angelico, because why on earth would they just randomly go from Pitt to Rutgers together, and then Rutgers to Tampa Bay, and then Tampa Bay to Cleveland? Is there another common denominator I missed when doing my background research, or are they just that good of friends where they wanted to go coach together at these different spots? But there is a knock potentially on Angelico. He's never called plays before. Not only in the NFL, but he's never done it in college either. He's actually only been a tight end coach over the past decade. So if you do hire him, it's absolutely a risk. But after hearing about his background here initially, would you hire Brian Angelico as the next Miami Dolphins offensive coordinator? Pin comment on today's show. Type Y for yes or type N for no. That is in the comments. Let me hear your voice. But the question is he a one-trick pony? Now, that's a little cliche. That actually isn't the case whatsoever. But I do find it interesting that he has only been a tight end coach since 2007. Going back to Pittsburgh, Rutgers, Browns, Tampa. He even went to Green Bay in 2016 when Hafley went to San Francisco. So they went different routes, and ultimately Angelico was in a spot that Hafley ended up going to. But he's only been a tight end coach. I also have to give one more shout out. I know I'm going to flow. I'm sorry. He went to Ithaca and coached for a while as well. That's in Western New York. I almost went to Ithaca, fun fact. They're in my final 3 of colleges. But I'll say this when it comes to Angelico. It's a risky hire, but I can't judge it. Because the reason why I can't judge it is the same reason why I said I'm not going to judge the hire of Jeff Hafley. A lot of people were concerned with him being the next head coach of Miami because he is just a friend with the GM, John Eric Sullivan. And even though that's not even the case, they just started working together and meeting each other for the first time in 2024. But nonetheless, I'm giving Hafley the benefit of the doubt here as a first-time NFL head coach to prove that he is worthy of being the hire. Just like I would have to give Angelico the benefit of the doubt to showcase he is worthy of being an offensive coordinator. We won't be able to judge these guys until they're actually on the sidelines coaching, right? But I will say he's coming from the right tree. Like, you look at Angelico's coaches that he's worked under over the last decade in the NFL when he was in Green Bay for 3 years, 2016, 2017, 2018. He was underneath Mike McCarthy, who's one of the better offensive minds in the NFL over the past 15 years. But he's also worked under Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings offensive play caller and head coach for the last 3 years, 2022, but also in Washington in 2019 when Kevin O'Connell was their offensive coordinator. That's coming from the right offensive scheme that has really worked in the NFL and over the last 4 or 5 seasons and decade plus with Mike McCarthy. So I am going to be intrigued at the minimum when it comes to Angelico as a offensive coordinator candidate. Today's show is sponsored by Marsmen. Fellas, is there a time where you feel like you're losing it? Same workout, same diet, but you felt like you were moving through the mud. One day you're crushing it, and the next day you're wondering why everything feels twice as hard. Well, luckily, Marsmen is there to get you back to stronger physical performance. It's designed to help free locked testosterone so your body can actually use it. No synthetics, no needles, just real ingredients that help optimize energy, focus, and strength, supports healthy T levels, energy, and stamina. I've got the bottle here in studio. It's sleek, it's nice. You just take the capsules as directed, and there you go. It's made in the USA and third-party tested. And how about this too? 90-day money-back guarantee. There's no risk. Worst case scenario, you don't absolutely love it, and you get your money back. But guess what? I'm going to trust you will love it because 91% of users report higher energy levels. For a limited time only, our listeners get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. It's a perfect way to kick off the new year strong. That's mengotomars.com for 50% off and 3 free gifts at checkout. After you purchase, please do us a favor. It's very important. And tell them where you heard about them. Support our show and tell them we sent you. Now, let's look at some other OC candidates. We talked a lot about Angelico today on yesterday's show. We talked a lot about Jason Vrable, the current Packers pass game coordinator, as an option in Miami as well. Well, I've got 15 OC candidates I think we have to keep an eye on here. These are the 10 names that I've frequently mentioned. We talked in-depthly today about Angelico. We talked about Jason Vrable yesterday. But I'm also going to throw out there Connor Lewis, the Packers pass game coordinator out there, who's been involved as a consultant. Sean Mannion, the quarterback coach in Green Bay. Luke Getsy, an offensive assistant who's been an OC multiple times. And then there's obviously some other sexy names out there. Bobby Slowik, Brian Daboll, Nate Scheelhaase, Kliff Kingsbury, that we should keep an eye on. But how about 5 more names that might rise to the top of potential OC targets for Miami here? Joe Brady. He has gotten multiple head coaching interviews. Maybe he gets a head coaching gig. Maybe he doesn't. But with Buffalo firing Sean McDermott, if they bring in an offensive-minded coach that isn't Joe Brady as the top guy, Brady might go elsewhere. He grew up a Dolphins fan, so if he doesn't get a head coaching gig and he is fine working with Hafley and Hafley likes Joe Brady, that's an option, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Brady's offensive play calling. Arthur Smith, another guy who has gotten head coach interviews. Davis Webb, the Broncos quarterback coach and pass game coordinator, who's rising up the ranks, multiple head coach interviews. Same thing with Thomas Brown. There's a lot of good options out there. Let's be honest. And I think it's important for Miami, specifically Jeff Hafley, to nail this hire. Even though they might not have the best offensive personnel next season, they are going to need to have a good coordinator, play caller, and coach to rise and get the most out of the talent Miami has. And I do think the Dolphins may take a swing here. I think there is a safe play here going with someone Hafley's familiar with, whether it's a Connor Lewis or it's a guy like we talked about today, Angelico, or Jason Vrable. But I would not be shocked if Miami ultimately swung big, went after a Daboll, a Kingsbury, a Scheelhaase, a Webb, someone that is highly thought of in the NFL to be the next offensive coordinator. But let me know, who do you want as the next Dolphins OC? We talked about 15 names. We mentioned 15 names on today's show. Let me know your top guys. If you want my top 5, Well, I'll tell you. Number one is Nate Scheelhaase, the Rams pass game coordinator, who might get a head coaching gig, might not. But if he doesn't, he'll probably want to become an offensive coordinator somewhere to rise his stock and become a head coach maybe next year in the opening cycle. Same thing could be said about Davis Webb. I really like those two guys. But then I get into a couple proven commodities that have called plays before. Bobby Slowik, who's currently on Miami's staff, he interviewed with the Eagles for their OC job. I really like Thomas Brown. He called plays in Carolina as an interim OC. He has coached with the Chicago Bears. He's now in New England under Mike Vrable, learning with Josh McDaniels. I really like him. But if you wanted to go with a unknown swing guy that has worked with Jeff Hafley in Green Bay, my personal favorite, former NFL quarterback, Sean Mannion, comes in at number 5 on my list. But when I think about hiring a new OC and the next offensive coordinator in Miami, I am going to be honest. I want someone with established upside that people around the league think is a budding superstar, whether it's a Davis Webb or a Nate Scheelhaase, or someone with experience calling plays in some capacity. That's where Thomas Brown and Bobby Slowik come into play. That's why I could get on board with a Brian Daboll, get on board with a Kliff Kingsbury, a Joe Brady. Even though I don't really love those guys, I could get on board because I think experience will matter on the offensive side of the ball with Hafley being such a defensive-minded first-time NFL head coach. So that's where I'm at on the OC rumors right now. But I've got some more Rolly rumors, and shout out to everybody who's still watching today's show. If you are still watching, by the way, comment me so I know who the real ones are. But I've heard from multiple sources close to Miami and Jeff Hafley that suggest, now I'm going to choose to believe them, but I don't know for sure, but it sounds like it's heading this way. Jeff Hafley will be calling the plays on the defensive side of the ball for the Miami Dolphins. We wondered if he would do that as a first-time head coach. He's been very successful as a play caller with the Packers the last 2 years. I hope and assume that will be officially announced on Thursday's morning press conference that introducts him and GM John Eric Sullivan. But if you're watching this on Wednesday evening before that press conference, you might have heard it here first that he will be calling defensive plays, which tells me that he is likely going to bring in someone that he is extremely familiar with for the defensive coordinator role, which means I don't think Anthony Weaver comes back. And he, by the way, has now 3 interviews for head coaching gigs, 2 of them second time with the Steelers and Ravens, and he got requested by the Buffalo Bills as well. But I think Sean Duggan, the Packers linebacker coach, is a top option to follow Hafley to Miami. Tem Lukabu, who we talked about yesterday as a candidate, and then DeMarcus Covington and Vince Ogobase. Nailed it. Assistant defensive line coach for the Packers. I think all 4 of those guys could follow Hafley to Miami, be the defensive coordinator in name, help with the scheme, help with the coaching, help with the game plan on a week-to-week basis, but Jeff Hafley ultimately is calling the plays. And that'll do it for today's show. Loaded episode here. We'll have more tomorrow with reactions to the press conference for Jeff Hafley. Subscribe today if you want more.